All right. Hello there, friends, and welcome to a very impromptu episode here of Tim Kirby Russia, where for some reason the phone actually wants me to be far away. Isn't that weird? Judging by my little icon, I think you can actually hear me. That's a very good thing. And as you can see, I am far away from the usual Fort Kirby. So, anyways, you guys had some really interesting topics that I threw out, or that you threw out into the discussion. I asked you guys what you'd want me to talk about. Usually on Tim Kirby Russia, we focus on Russia-related topics. Today's actually Victory Day, by the way. The day of recording is Victory Day, so for all of you who are, let's just put it this way, hopefully in favor of the Soviet Union's victory over the Germans in World War II, I congratulate you with Victory Day. And hopefully that's all of you. But anyways, let me take a look because some of the questions you guys sent me were actually really interesting. And I hope the echo in this room does not drive you nuts. So let's go back and try to take a look here. Okay. It says here, going through an overall experience for Russian education system, the pros and cons, and difference from Western schools, universities. So yeah, guys, if you have something to comment, write it under the post where I asked people for topics for the live stream, because I don't have my computer with, the big fat computer I usually use is not with me. And it's hard to search for things during a live stream on a telephone. So write all your comments there. So it's about like the Russian educational system. I think we've talked about this before, but I don't think we've talked about it at any time recently. I can tell you one thing about both my children, and especially about my daughter, is that there's this sort of stereotype that the Russian education system is way better, and any Russian kid that goes to America can dominate. And I can tell you one thing, that when my daughter was like 4 years old or something, or maybe she's already five, and she went to America for like the second time, her English language level was very low, and she had to get like special help. And actually, what was really cool was the county, got her into like a special foreign language sort of, or like not foreign language, for like speakers of foreign languages, sort of in a like a lift you up kind of program, and it really worked. And so she really picked up English extremely well that year, and everything was wonderful. But then she literally did become like the best student at school. Like as soon as she kind of got the grasp on the language, she was like the best. So that kind of Russian stereotype is at least proven to be true with my kid. And the Russian system does at least kind of push people harder. And one thing I would say that is good, though, is they don't push people as hard as in Japan, Korea, or China. Because if, I don't know, maybe a lot of the stuff is exaggerated for YouTube hype. But whenever we hear about, like, how many hours Japanese kids have to study, and then they have to do homework at like 6 at night at their own home, or in China, you spend your entire childhood getting ready for some sort of test, or especially South Korea, you spend your entire childhood getting ready for some sort of test to go to university, and that was your childhood. And it's like, that is not the way it is in Russia. And I would say for the better. I think that there comes a point where, well, first off, you're talking to someone who's a little bit skeptical of academia as a whole. Obviously, we have to educate people. We have to give people sort of the basic knowledge, and that the idea of having public schools to provide people with that sort of basic low-level knowledge is pretty good. It'd be really good if we gave people in Russia a higher level of like civics education. My kids get a little bit of like, religion in school, and stuff about other cultures. Let's just say the Russian education system is a little bit more worldly in its content, but it's not exactly a breeding ground for creating philosophers either. So I can tell you that in a lot of ways the Russian system is better, and especially doesn't have any of the rainbow flag, alphabet soup, kind of LGBT stuff going on. There's none of that, just none of it. Okay. So the one thing about that system is, if you're in a Western country and you feel that, first off, like what you hear from Scandinavian people is this, like, I learned nothing in school except how to speak English well, and some weird, like, creepy kink, sex, grooming stuff. Like, I've had people from Scandinavia say that to me. Okay. Well, we have one person from Scandinavia who I know is listening now. Maybe he can tell us, but I think he's my age, so maybe he was in school before the insanity started. But anyways, like, so I'll put it this way: even the Russian education system, in my opinion, isn't quite as deeply philosophical or maybe as effective as it could be. And they've only decided, I heard recently that they're going to bring back like shop class finally, to make better men out of men and all this stuff. I think there's plenty of room for improvement, but it is way better than some sort of, again, um, four-letter rainbow nightmare that you get in Scandinavia, or unfortunately in all sorts of places across the United States. So, yeah, I would say it's pretty good in that sense, but your kids are definitely going to have more homework, but they're not going to have as much homework as Koreans or Japanese children. And they will get a lot more math because math is good for science, and that math is going to come early. And so, like, my daughter is already past, I think, my level of math knowledge. So I'm kind of useless on that front. But when it comes to geography and history and all that stuff, I'm a lot more useful. But so anyways, that's kind of how it is. Um, Overall, there are some discipline problems because Russia signed up for what is it called? I think because there's a Vienna Convention, no, Bologna, as in like in or Bologna, like the place in Italy. There's like a was a Bologna Convention on education, and so Russia had to like alter its education system a lot. But before the war, before Russia really rejected all this other stuff. So you do see like sometimes children who are not like fully handicapped, but a little slow being put in with the other kids, and as you know, that drags them down. That's happened to both my son and daughter. Um, uh, a little bit of too much focus on standardized testing. Everyone hates the national standardized test here. So yeah, there's definitely some minuses, but I think that like with a lot of things in Russia, the educational system is going to change for or is changing in probably the right direction. And compared to like the Western nightmare system, it's a clear win. You know what I mean? It's just an obvious choice. Now, if someone is like, Tim, well, would you rather send your children to study in Russia or study in Singapore? Singapore has always been famous for having an amazing educational system. That I can't tell you. You know what I mean? I don't really know what it's like to be a student in Singapore. Maybe they do make every generation a generation packed full of geniuses. That I can't tell you. But when it comes to what I know, which is the West, especially America, yeah, the Russian system has its benefits. And if you have any sub questions, feel free to ask them because this is just a chit chat day. We're just talking about questions here, and there's actually people listening. That always brings me joy. Oh my gosh. So, anyways, the next thing, Sam asks the settlement process in the Novorossiya region, how to get an apartment in Mariupol. Sam, since I know you're a foreign person, see, if a Russian person wrote that, I would have thought it was sarcasm. But as a foreign person, well, it's a war zone. All of the Novorossiya, so the four new regions of Russia, that being the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics and Zaporozhye and the Khersonskaya region, are still in a state of war. No one wants your foreign ass there. Okay, I'll put that much. I don't even know if there's really a federal migration services operating during a time of war in those regions. Maybe, but you know, now's not the time, man. Now is really, really, really not the time. I could say that I guess anyone, be they foreign or foreign born or Russian born, who is a person who gets Russian citizenship, then they could just buy anything anywhere. And if apartments are actually for sale in Mariupol, which I think they are, to be honest, because a while ago on one of these live streams, we checked for like buying stuff on Xi'an, one of my favorite hobbies, just going to Xi'an and looking at stuff. My what would that be? Guilty pleasure or something. And there were options within the actual Novorossiya, like war zone, Mariupol, and all that. So apparently you can, but as a foreign person, that would just be an extremely stupid decision, because you will be under the eye of Sauron from the security services. And like I said, I don't even know if the migration services are operating in those regions because they're in a state of war. So it's really not the time for that at all. So. All right, that was a little bit easy question. Don't buy an apartment in Mariupol, in my opinion. Not yet. Unless you have citizenship. Then, hey, go nuts. Why does Russian online media and cinematography suck comparatively to Russian literature? That is actually a very interesting question. That one, you know what? It's also interesting. First off, the previous question is interesting because I've never gotten that one before. And this is a question I think I've never gotten before either. New questions that I've never gotten before bring me joy. The question of Tim, why'd you move to Russia? That does not bring me joy. That brings me only misery. Anyways, about the cinematography being bad. Well, one thing is about Russian literature. I think you're probably referring to Russian literature of like the Golden Age in the 19th century, or are you talking about Russian literature now? Because if you're talking about Russian literature now, who are these great like writers of modern times? Like, because there are some popular writers that seem to release a lot of books, but are any of them really that great or wonderful? Are they the kind of people we're going to remember, like Pushkin or Dostoevsky or Mayakovsky or someone? I'm thinking no. You know, uh, so I don't think that modern Russian literature is really anything amazing to write home about. But again, I'm not the kind of person who likes fiction, so maybe you're talking to the wrong kind of person. Maybe there are like 3 or 4 authors out there who are just doing this amazing work, and I'm just not aware of it because I'm a normie when it comes to literature. But I can tell you that Russian cinematography, for the most part, sucks because of the 90s, man. At least in the Soviet Union, like if you look at the comedy films of Gaidai, who made a bunch of like the most famous comedy films that were super successful in the 60s. Well, I think one of the reasons that he was successful is a lot of these films, had a lot to do with, I don't know, kind of like simple humor and maybe some little cultural stereotypes and real life. Or if you look at like the irony of fate, the overall arching plot of how all the buildings look the same. So someone goes to the identical apartment building on an identically named street, but in St. Petersburg as opposed to Moscow. It was sort of, even though obviously what happened in that movie was not super realistic, it was sort of based on reality. There were movies made for like normal people. So when the 90s happened, not only is there a factor of corruption, so whoever gets, it's always amazing to me who gets government funding for movies and who doesn't. It's still a mystery to this day, and it seems to be kind of like an old boys network where the same guys keep making the same movies, even if they suck, because they know who to go to for the grant money. So there's a little bit of old boy network, which of course, like everything in Russia since the war started, is going to change. That's all those, especially liberal old boy networks, which is kind of an ironic thing to say. Those are all falling apart or have fallen apart. But the attitude of at least in the Soviet Union, a lot of the movies were sort of made in line with like this communist glory to the working class. Were kind of made for normal people, or like a lot of Russians really like the World War II movies of that era because everyone who was involved in their production fought in World War II. So the at least the you know uh, this stuff was real, and you saw a lot of people really like the World War II, again, the World War II movies of that era because the everyone had that experience, and so it comes across as very real, and they were made for the masses. So once you get into like the 90s, then you get into the sort of like self-hating Russian liberals making movies about how awful life in Russia is, and you get a lot of like art house. Nothing is worse than art house. What a just a dumpster for money. And so I think a lot of times, young Russian directors, they want to do like this a movie that's not popular, but that's important. And that really expresses, it's very like, that like European attitude towards film that they want to make something important. They don't want to make it for the masses. And when they do that, they come up with these piles of shit that no one cares about. Or like I said, if they're liberals, then their natural liberalism of hating the Russian masses, hating Russia always comes through a lot of these movies and you just want to vomit. When I was on the bus coming back from Novorossiysk to Moscow, or I should say to Chekhov, but the Moscow region. So that's a 24-hour bus drive. Um, After winning the minor league championship of American football, got my blocks in, got my big medal. They put on this movie from the 90s. I was really hoping to actually kind of hear some stories from the guys I play with and hear about their lives. Nope, they put on this really shit movie. I believe it's called Dimbil or whatever. That's like, it's the term you use for your last month in the army. And man, it is just a self-hating Russian shit fest. But it's also filmed in this like very art housey way where things like everything is super ironic, super abstract. Like the absurdity is like super absurd. And you just watch this, I'm like, this is just a vomit. This is just a visual vomit. And so yeah, so that's why the movie sucked, because like the 90s. The 90s created this new generation of self-hating liberal directors who make movies like that. And not for the masses, but in spite of the masses, because they sort of hate them on government money. But again, like I said, that's all seems to be changing at present. So yeah, but your thesis that there's brilliant Russian literature all over the place, and movies are bad. I think you're kind of comparing like the high point of Russian literature being especially if you kind of, well, Pushkin was the first half of the 19th century, but I think it really seemed like the golden age really hit its stride in like the second half of the 19th century. So yeah, and of course you also have some great more like Ilyin, who we've been talking about. I will find an expert on Ilyin to come on the program eventually. And Lev Gumilyov and like the Eurasianists and a lot of these, let's just say, nonfiction writers seem to be very hot in like the first half of the 20th century. There's a lot of stuff like that. But it seems in the 21st century, I don't know, I'm not seeing a whole lot of great fiction. So there you go. That's my answer to that question. Let's see what we have next. And again, guys, because I can't really see what anyone's commenting. Um, and I see Christopher's watching. Christopher, listen to your voice messages, because I just sent you a voice message before the started, please. So anyways, if you have a comment, please write it under the post where I said topics for the next live stream needed. Oh my gosh. The healthcare system in Russia. We can get back to that. That's a big one. Discuss the topic that Russia is like the modern 1950s in America. Well, that's kind of a topic for like a whole live stream. But then again, when am I going to get around to it? And I'll probably forget, because I'm a forgetful person. So, in what ways is Russia like 1950s America? Okay. And do we have any? I hope everything looks good on my end here. Anyways, what is 1950s America? First off, I think one thing is this isn't to be like an America hater, because I'm not. You might not believe that, but I'm really not. But I think one thing we have a kind of a problem with in America is we get stuck on certain um, snags, a certain intellectual barbed wire. And one of these sort of intellectual barbed wire, oh, someone wrote some kind of comment. Oh, I missed it. Intellectual barbed wire is this whole thing of the 1950s. Yes, the 1950s wasn't like the high point of America. It was after World War II. There was this real, you can see that there was definitely like a real cultural explosion. Like I just mentioned Gumilyov. Gumilyov would say that it was a very a high passionary period in history where American ideas really started to explode even further. So there was a lot of good stuff about the 1950s. But I think in a lot of ways, we in America really get sort of hung up on the 50s, sort of like the high point, because there were also a lot of problems with the 50s. So I don't want this. I want to answer this question not from the standpoint of in what way is Russia like this utopian high point in American history. Okay, let's try to look at the 1950s a little bit more, objectively, if we can, or a little bit more broadly and less utopian as things were. Okay, so the things that people kind of like about the 1950s were that There were a lot less taxes. There was a lot more personal freedom. And in that sense, yeah, you don't have people breathing down your neck in Russia. They kind of don't want, it's kind of like the police and the tax services. They don't really want to bust you, especially if you don't have much money. They're just not interested. No one's coming for you. So you have that kind of freedom, right? Um, but also with the 1950s, you really have then, well, there is the shift in the Russian market towards buying homes. But in America, we sort of during the 1950s really codified this idea of the single family home and that everyone drives a car and the streets are going to look the way they are. The width of the street is going to be so much. And actually, the streets are very wide in America, even on small suburban streets, and the lawns are going to not have a fence, and you have to have this lawn in front of your house, but you can't do anything with your lawn. And so, anyways, in the 50s, you sort of get this very idyllic street view. Like if you think in your mind, for those of you who are either older or have at least researched the history of the United States, think about what this like 1950s or maybe 1960s street looks like. Well, you don't really see that in Russia. Well, you do see a lot of streets with a lot of houses, but they all have big fences. Russians don't want people looking at them. So everywhere there's a 2 meter fence. 2 meters is taller than I am, just for those who forget. In fact, it's way taller than I am. It's 15 centimeters taller than I am. But so you get kind of fences everywhere. You don't have like a street where people or like kids sort of play. It's a lot of times, not as wide. The houses tend to be smaller because they're harder to heat. So you don't really have this like 1950s sort of homes starting to get real big, although they've gotten bigger over time, even compared to the 1950s. But so everything's more, I would say, kind of compact, and definitely not everything's made out of wood anymore. But there is a return in Russia towards buying homes, and especially after Putin said that the government wants to. They've already achieved that there's something like 20 some square meters of living space within Russia per person, and they want to increase that to 33 by 2030. But we have to remember that that includes like people who own gigantic giga houses that are 500 square meters, and some people who live in like a one-room studio, which is like 15 square meters, right? And that's where you get your sort of average from. But if the average was true, then for someone to have mom, dad, 3 children, and then potentially grandma, well, then that's what? Let's see, six. So that's 30. So that's 680, and then 3 times 6 is 24. So that's like 204 square meters of space to have like your mom, dad, your 3 kids, and then have grandma live with you. So the Russian government thinks that those people should, roughly speaking, on average, live in 204 square meters of space. That doesn't exist in Russia in terms of apartments. That only exists in individual houses. So if the Russian government wants people to actually live this lifestyle that they've sort of laid out, because in some ways it's ironic. It's how in Soviet Russia, car drives you, or in Soviet presidential campaign, all promises made after election, because Putin just sort of laid out his vision for what his this presidential term is going to look like and the goals they want to have. And the goal of giving everyone 33 square meters of space, and then also having much bigger families is pretty crazy. And it means the death of apartments. Because if the government wants to achieve this, they don't build 200 square meter apartments. That's like a 7 or 8 room apartment or something. The average one-room Soviet apartment is something like 35. Two-room apartments were like 45, 55. Three-room apartments were like 60, 70. You see what I mean? And so that's like three-room apartments for one family. It's just, yeah, something's got to change. But like about the 1950s and space and having this big land and big house and all that. Well, apparently the government here is going to have to, if it wants to achieve that goal, we're going to have more single family homes that are freaking big. That if they really want to do this, they're really going to put effort into it. Because, like I said, just when I saw that, I was like, the math does not add up. It does not also does not complement an apartment based lifestyle. So, um, another thing about the '50s that I think people really appreciate was the whole anyone can get a job anywhere, and with that job, you can support a family. So in Russia, anyone can get a job anywhere if they speak Russian. That's the hard part. You have to speak Russian really well. So there's jobs everywhere, but the pay isn't that great. As I've told you guys before, the salaries in Russia tend to suck. But one thing that's also important is I was just reading an article where one famous economist was yelling at another famous economist. He was like, "That bastard is lying. He's lying at the State Duma. He said that the average salary is 30,000 rubles a month, which is more closer to what I've always heard." And this other guy's like, "No, by my math, it's 60,000." Well, 60,000 is a lot bigger. Okay, it's twice as big. But even at 60,000 rubles, that is not going to give you this 1950s lifestyle of a nice house and a nice car, wife who doesn't work, 2.5 kids and the dog. On 60,000 rubles a month, you're not going to get that. So that is the difference between the 1950s. The 1950s also sort of have this attitude of that it was almost like a pre-crime America. Whereas, there was like the gangster crime like the 1920s, but whatever. But that there really wasn't much crime in the 50s, and they definitely experienced that in Russia. If you were to take, especially like, I don't know, street fights out of the crime statistics, that seems to be like the number one. Just someone got angry and they fought it out in the street. If you take that away, there's very, very little crime here. So in that sense, maybe Russia is like America in the 1950s. Are people sort of living a modern lifestyle, and yet they're a lot more conservative? Like if you imagine what's the mindset of people in the 1950s, right? Like, I remember talking to my grandparents and how they saw the world. So the not the boomer mentality, because they were young in the 1950s, or maybe not even born yet. The sort of World War II generation, what was their mentality as being adults in the 1950s? And they weren't exactly living like feudal peasants, or um, they weren't exactly opposed to the modern world. They were definitely in it, but they were way more conservative than the people who came after them. And so, in some ways, yeah, Russians are kind of more like in their attitude towards things, kind of like how my grandfather and grandmother maybe saw the world on some level. Of course, a lot of things have happened, things have changed. They're not people who are in the 1950s, so not everything is exactly the same. But in terms of the mentality of people, maybe, well, I'll put it this way: would Russians be closer to Americans in the 1950s than modern day Americans in the mainstream are to America in the 1950s? Probably, almost definitely. So that's something that's also kind of similar. Um, and one thing I've mentioned before is that for the most part, especially if you get outside of like Moscow and St. Petersburg, where there's more tax money, so there's more public transport and all that. And there is public transport everywhere, even out here in the Caucasus Mountains. I got to take the same type of electric train that I take to visit my buddy Sean. It's just there's only like 6 or 7 trains a day. Come on, guys. Caucasus Mountains, come on, guys. Let's 7 trains a day is ridiculous. It's way too few. But in general, when you sort of get away from Moscow, St. Petersburg, you get more and more into the universe of driving. And America in the 1950s was the driving, we drive, we have cars. And in a lot of ways, Russia is like that, modern Russia. It is very much a driving and we have cars thing. Only, whereas that was always sort of supported by the government in America. And the Russian government really doesn't want as many people driving. They don't want to build the infrastructure. They don't want to deal with the car crashes. So in some ways, they don't want you to drive, but you're going to anyways. So yeah, just going sort of off the cuff here, that's kind of my view about things in terms of like the 1950s. Oh, I would also say maybe in closing about the 1950s is again one of the reasons why it is this praised moment in American history is because it was a very optimistic moment, a very again, this very moment of like this coming together of what is American culture and all that. And I think that we're in a moment of optimism right now. Ever since the special military operation started, and everyone in Russia survived the big wave of sanctions, there's been really a rebirth of Russian culture, and I think we're heading towards maybe some sort of cultural high point. We have that, again, passionary energy, as Gumilev would put it. So that's another way where maybe there's some similarities. So are there a lot of similarities? Yes, but then again, guys, remember, if you're creative enough, you can sort of uh, draw together enough lines and create enough similarities to make any two things look kind of similar. So I don't know. Again, if we were to say, maybe how about this again, going back to a comparison, where the trajectory of where we see America going now, and the attitudes that a lot of people have in America right now, and the sort of the way things are in Russia, which is closer to 1950s America, I would say Russia, but not in like a black and white yes and no kind of thing. Because again, it's different, but I would say it's the one that's closer. So let's see, what else do we have? We have questions. Where can I see the blueprints of the housing modules, price tables regarding the size, base, installation? Are you talking about the American Village or what? I don't know. The new village with respect to everyone so far. Well, I don't know, man. Though here, I'll put it this way. If you're really interested in doing this thing and you want to do this thing this year, then write me a private message. You've written me before, and we'll discuss all this American Village stuff together. But if you're going to get into like all this detail about like what's the water table like, dude, come on. The elevation plot, that's a simple 5 meters. Yeah, I don't know what the water level is because it doesn't matter in Russia. No one cares. Um, I don't know. Hardening time for concrete foundations. Don't worry about that because you wouldn't be the one putting down the foundation. You see what I mean? Unless you just want to buy the land. But then again, that's a rough one. I don't know, man. I guess we could maybe get into some American Village talk maybe near the end of this because it's going to be way too nuancy, and today is just sort of an open question time. A way for broke people like me to get money and get out of this hell. Well, if you're referring to the West, the thing now we're going to touch some of Tim's buttons. Is I don't know about money, but as I've told you, many people before, and I do believe the person who wrote this message is single. Is you need to get married to someone here and get on the process to getting citizenship and build a life here. Because no matter what you do, if you're say I don't know, 30 years old, right? You're in the West. The economic situation is not that great. Well, let's be honest. And I think that some of the people complain online. I can't make ends meet. I can't make any money. Trust me, I see them too. I watch mostly YouTube in English. I don't think they're lying. In the past, I think people were kind of whiny, but it is really hard. The whole thing about like a meal at McDonald's is now like $19. Holy moly! Um, that there's actually like McDonald's is even falling apart because people are too poor for McDonald's. It's not really that you're going to be able to at 30 years old, given really bad economic conditions, find some kind of job and pack away this really freaking large sum of money to comfortably move to Russia. By the time that happens, I don't know, you're already going to be retired. It's just the whole um, the whole situation is just not like that anymore. I don't know unless you can somehow live with your mom and dad or with friends and pay virtually no rent and work a job where you put all the money, basically, 80% of the money into the bank, and after 6 months or a year, hey, you might actually have a pretty decent sum of money to start doing something in Russia. But if you can't do that, then you just need to go online and find someone with your religious convictions who lives here, get to know them, and get married and start a life here. And that's how, because you'll just be otherwise waiting for an eternity that's never going to come. So. All right, next question. Okay, hopefully some people are watching. Sorry, guys. I am not in a bad mood. I'm actually in a pretty good mood because I am not working recently. In the West, the only way out of the student loan, university, insanity stuff is trade school or IT certificates to walk away from the trap and get a six-figure income. Well, yeah, you can go into the trades. I agree, Christopher. I agree with what you're saying. Is the trades are a very good set of skills. But again, it's kind of one of these things where it's like, you know, you are like if you're a teenager or something and you're watching my channel. Well, first off, thank you. You're very young for watching this old man with gray hair. But, then maybe it's different. If you're, 16 or 18, yeah, you can do your 3 years, get a union job, start trying to pack away the money. Again, live with like your mom and dad and all that, and then you'll be able to have some sort of sizable amount of money where you could actually maybe come to Russia and do something with that money or start your life over again. But to think about it, to go into a trade, it's going to take a couple of years, and that's a couple more years of your life done, and then you have to be in the trade and you have to make money, and then by the time you get here, unless you really freaking learn the language amazingly well, you might not be able to work in that trade initially. You see? So, again, it's kind of this thing where it's like, I'm just always so surprised with how many people who claim to be religious are also really anti-marriage. They're really like, no, I'm not getting married. I'm not going to marry someone and move to Russia. I'm not going to do that. Like, so something's not adding up. A lot of Christianity, no desire to get marriage. Something ain't right there, boys. Something ain't right. But yeah, there's no simple solution. But the more time you wait, the less time you have in your life to, build a career. And it might just be best to get married to someone here who might not be in the best situation and start your fight on this battlefield rather than fighting on that battlefield that you've already lost on. So. Okay. Now remember, please put your comments under where it says on Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore topics for next live stream, because that's where I'm looking. How does Russia expect to have an increased birth rate but still allow abortion? Well, it doesn't. They're continuously clamping and clamping, and it's getting harder and harder and harder. So yeah, essentially, when it's now become much more difficult than it is in the past, and when they finally kind of cramp the final loopholes, and that's basically kind of all Russia needs. You get rid of abortion, the amount of aborted babies compensates for all the demographic problems. So the person here who wrote their answer in Russian actually was telling the truth. Moving into a war zone, bad idea. Christopher, I agree with you so much. I agree with you 100%. Thank you for supporting me. A flight, I guess, from Cuba to Moscow goes for about 5,000 rubles. Americans can visit Cuba as they turn up there in numbers. But El Anonimo, you have to remember that's not easy for Americans to go to Cuba. I guess you could maybe fly something like, there's probably still flights from America to Venezuela. So maybe be like America, Caracas, Havana, and then go to Russia. But yeah, there's no, from what I understand, there's still no direct flights to Cuba from the United States. I could be wrong about that because Obama said he wanted a rapprochement with Cuba, but I don't think there are. And those flights are going to cost way more than 5,000 rubles. In Zimbabwe, for instance, it's customary for students to pray before we start school, saying the Lord's prayers. Are such things done in Russian schools? No, because the religions are all too different. So, no. At religious schools, they are. Where Father Joseph teaches, they sure are. Oh no, I lost my thing there. No. But no. So no, there's no prayer at public schools. Public schools have to sort of have neutrality, but they do have religious lessons about various things. In fact, my daughter was asking me some questions. They had various sort of icons, from the stories of the Bible, and it was sort of like, match this story to this icon. You know what I mean? So it was like uh, Joseph and Mary go into what is it, Bethlehem, and there's a star over the sky in Bethlehem, and the three wise men see it and react to it. Which one is that? So there's a religious component to it, but not a prayer component. Let's see, hold on. Good comment. Mariupol isn't a war zone any more than Crimea is. My granite guy has been working there for 8 months. No shelling. Well, here comes. Oh, so well, Kevin, buddy. First off, I can't get your message on the screen this day, maybe. But Kevin, the thing yeah, I understand that right now Mariupol is definitely not on the front line. It is not a war zone, but it is in one of the states that is where the front lines are. And so, uh, it basically it might as well be. Foreign people aren't wanted there. Like again, there's probably no migration services. Crimea was integrated in 2014 and had many years to actually build up their migration services and do all this stuff. Whereas all of the new Russian states were sort of born out of fire. So yeah, it's the Crimea is a little bit different. But as you know, Kevin, it's not easy to immigrate to the Crimea, is it? So not like immigrating to Moscow. So, anyways, why is this thing okay? Is there a Russian equivalent to America's Dave Ramsey? Maybe you could say Khazin or Delyagin or Katasonov, or I'm just thinking of famous people talk about economics. But usually in Russia, people talk about the macro in economics, not so much the micro. Like I can't really think of like a personal finance expert, but usually some of the big experts talk about all that. Sergei Glaziev is again not a personal finance guy. He's macroeconomics, but he's very interesting. So no, maybe there really is an equivalent to Dave Ramsey because Dave Ramsey is a reflection of purely Protestant values and attitudes towards money, and Russians don't see it that way. And yeah, so that's not really. And also, he's not only a Protestant, but he's also sort of a reflection of like the baby boomers, because he talks a lot about stuff like 401ks and Roth IRAs and investing in this and doing stocks, and no one here does that for the retirement. It's real estate or nothing, or yeah. So you don't get into this whole like baby boomer. I've got to retire this, that, or the other. Like Russians just don't really think in that way. That's not the way it goes. And also, you can try as much as you want. You tell Russians, don't blow all your money on vacation. They're going to do it anyways. So yeah, he's just Dave Ramsey's a real reflection of some unique sort of American phenomena that I don't think translate too well to here. If I was financially successful, I'd try, but I'm not. I'm okay, but I'm definitely not rich. So I'm more of an example of the way I guess Russian people use money. So Christopher asks about recommends getting a job. Get a location independent job. US tax work can be done anywhere over the internet, even from a beach on Thailand. Watch this guy's videos. Yeah, I guess that's true. That's a good idea. I know some people who still work in America from here, if you can believe it, even during these tough times. And it is a good way to make a lot of money because dollars don't do much in America, but they do here. I'm a software engineer and it has worked for me, at least for the broke part. In other words, it's a high demand field that pays well. My only worry is that AI is taking over these jobs. Don't worry about AI. That's don't get demotivated by anything. Fuck them. Just keep going. I remember 15 years ago how everyone said that 3D printing was going to take everyone's job. And then they said that self-driving vehicles were going to take everyone's job. And the next thing is AI is going to take everyone's job. They aren't. It's a scam. Maybe not a scam in the direct sense, but it's the people who are in the whole startup universe, they have to overhype everything in order to get massive financing to make money. And so they really overhype everything and the scale of everything. So the potential of and blockchain. Blockchain was going to change everything. Here comes Web 3.0. The internet will never be the same. And yeah, there's some cool stuff about blockchain, and crypto has its fans and some case uses. Did it revolutionize the internet? No. Did blockchain change everything? No. So again, a lot of the modern technologies that are in the stuff that keeps coming up, it doesn't actually like create these crazy revolutions where like the car came and got rid of the horse. Don't worry about AI. Don't worry about AI, especially in programming. Fly to Mexico first, then Cuba. So Mexico has flights to Cuba. See, I thought maybe U.S. authorities would put the kibosh on that. That's probably not too expensive to fly to Mexico and then Cuba. But still, it's going to be 3 flights. And another question is, how does one now easily buy then air tickets on the narrow flight in advance from 2 countries that are both super sanctioned? It's not like you're trying to buy from Turkey or Armenia. You are going from super sanctioned entity number 1 to super sanctioned entity number 2. There's probably a way to do it, but I don't know what it is. Unfortunately, friends, I do not know everything about Russia, although I wish I did. And one day, maybe I will. I see the only way to increase the birth rate and the number of white Christians is to import Christians from other. Okay. Yeah, that's not quite what we're talking about here. And especially coming from our good buddy Max, who is always full of joy and glee and just full of optimism for the future. So we'll pass over Max's optimism for now. And absolutely, Max. The issue is that those countries you mentioned. Okay, now we're getting this whole birth rate thing. That's a whole another thing. What are my thoughts on Ramzan Kadyrov? He's a man that I am very jealous of. Very, very jealous of. He's achieved really everything in life that I wish I could have. So he is my one of my idols, I guess. So let's go back. And also, if you've ever been to Chechnya, it's really freaking nice. I think actually Russians have a lot, and everyone are people who are. Oh no, why did it go blank? Why did it do that? No. The screen went blank. Okay, so I hope I'm still here. I hope you're still seeing me. But anyways, view live stream. Okay. About Ramzan Kadyrov and anything. For those of us who are wanting to make a more traditional society in the future, Chechnya is a good model, man. They are very, very traditional, yet they are very, very also the 21st century. And Chechnya is gorgeous, and they really take care of their own guys, which is, I think, what everyone from Western democracies want is the deep desire to finally have the authorities actually kind of like care about you. So yeah, I think that Chechnya is maybe almost like a case study for how to build a traditional society in the 21st century. Again, if I had like access to some sort of grant money, I would love to go down there and actually write like an entire book and really study what they're doing and how they're doing it, and like make some sort of like book, white paper kind of thing. But I do not think that's going to happen because I do not have a doctorate degree, and I can't pretend that I have one. But if I did have a doctorate degree, I would be doing so much case study work on what they're doing down there. So I'm a big Kadyrov fan. I'm a fanboy. I support their methodology of what they're trying to do down there, and good for them. So, but I wanted to. So, anyways, did anyone want to call in? We could take calls. There's a lot of people listening. Wow. I'm just going through. I'm trying to see who's here, who's with us. I know having my hand in the way isn't very fun, but like I said, I am in the Caucasus Mountains, and I do not have access to the big fat computer that I usually do. So if someone wants to call in, you can call in, but I don't think anyone does. So I guess we can one question came from Christopher about the American Village. So we'll go back and answer that because we don't seem to have any new questions and no one wants to call in. So let's do that. because it was a
Hey,
long one.
hey,
Okay.
Tim.
Oh, hello.
Uh,
Was that Christopher? Is that no?
yeah,
This is.
yes,
I mean,
it's
didn't mean
me.
Barrett Christopher. I meant the other Christopher, Swedish
Oh,
Christopher.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think the other Christopher just wants, you probably just send him the info packet on prices for the American Village project, and
Oh,
he'll
that.
be
Oh,
happy to
that
go
I
over
can
it.
do. If that's what he meant. Oh, cool. Then I'll do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
I think he's also running this fantasy where he builds himself, but that if you don't speak barely good Russian, building yourself is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah,
Uh,
I really wouldn't recommend that. It's one of these things where, yeah, because, well, I don't know. My kind of part of thing, and again, the stupid monitor turned off. I must have.
yeah, yeah, it's like that
So
that joke you made about the Armenian contractor. This guy has money. Yeah,
yeah,
as far as
it'll wind up being something like that. I really don't recommend that. But if people just want to buy land in the American Village, it's working out that there's still spaces you can buy. The amount of people has really dwindled down from the thousands that follow material about this project to the hundreds that were willing at least to send a passport to sort of prove to the government that people are interested in this, which was 300 people or 300 groups of peoples and 300 families, has really boiled down to just a handful of people. So there's spots in the American Village. If someone really just wants to, I guess, buy the land, but the government wants you to have a house so you can have a residence, so you can have a registration. So
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know if that's really in their best interest, but if they want to, they can. There's space left.
yeah. My suggestion for the do-it-yourself crowd is to have the contractor you picked pour the concrete pad, build the walls, and put on the roof. And then if you want to knock yourself out with DIY, go right ahead.
You know,
As for myself and Jill and legal issues, yeah, we'll wait for Timur to get away from the May from the May vacation season.
yeah, yeah,
It'll
yeah.
just give us more time to get our apostille documents together for the
Well,
rest of
yeah, and
us.
again, I apologize to you privately, but I also apologize publicly that I'm sorry that this is taking so long. And I'm sorry that certain aspects of the contract didn't quite look good to you. But Timur even said that this is something we have to work out,
Yeah,
between
yeah,
everyone. And
I under,
so
yeah,
when he gets back,
I
we'll get going.
yeah, I understand. I just didn't realize that we were in a New Year's Eve celebration season situation right now. So
Yeah,
we'll
like
wait
I
till
said, the
Timur
official
gets,
holidays are last till the frickin' 12th of this year. Oh man.
yeah, yeah, we'll wait until Timur gets back to his office and we'll get this all
Yeah,
sorted out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right,
Yeah,
man. Well, good talking to
I'll
you.
let you
Stay
go.
strong. And again, my apologies for the inconvenience. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
So,
I'll let you go.
all right. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. Let's see. A question. How can you spot a Caucasian to a Russian or European guy? It's just super curious. Well, Bakani, I specifically bought clothing for this vacation to blend in with everyone. Because I got arrested in Ingushetia, no punishment, just arrested. I'm a very slick talker in Russian for wearing inappropriate clothing in an Islamic area. So this time I got real prepared and let's see, hold on. So, if you guys know, and why does the phone keep turning off? Why would it do this on a live stream? Here, I'm going to go back to the actual live stream. I bet it won't shut off on the live stream, but as long as I'm looking at the pictures, it wants to shut off. And now it doesn't want to stand up. Just amazing. I'm sorry, guys, the lack of professionalism here. But you see this? That's some fake Adidas right there. And so I bought like three pairs of sort of like those like if you look at like how MMA like gym guys dress with like this kind of like athletic sweatpants and all that and then t-shirts there's a real certain kind of like clothing look that people here have. There's sort of like this like a little bit of like the sort of some of the guys are a little Gucci Armani, but you get a lot of just like gym bro kind of looking guys. And if someone wears that kind of clothing, you kind of know they're from there. That's number one. Number two, they all have an accent. Well, not all, but a lot of people. So they have a very thick, very particular set, I should say, because the languages are different, but a particular set of accents that you hear immediately that someone's from down south. I would say the other thing is the classic, more Islamic beard, the beard that has all the way here, but not the mustache. So a lot of the more sort of Islamic style beards. That's another way that you could tell. Yeah. So it's just kind of a sort of look and an accent and a particular type of beard. So it's usually pretty obvious. Once you start living in Russia, you get to see all these sort of subtle differences between people, and they start to become a lot more pronounced, because most people I hear when they go to Moscow that are Western say everyone looks the same, right? Whereas Russians think that Moscow is like Soviet diversity to the maximum. So, okay. They do not teach this in Russia. I think it is necessary to introduce martial art classes. Our children are beaten up by migrants. Deputy suggests this, but Putin. Max, this is a problem. Max, you drive me nuts. And I will tell you why. Because you have this very strange, but actually it's not strange because it's very common. You have a very common attitude. And I don't quite know what to call it in English, but in Russian it's совковая, as in this very like Soviet slave to the system. So you feel that young Russian people can only possibly defend themselves through government intervention. So all of the, like the Emelianenkas and well, God, with the guy from Chekhov, Potapenka, I forgot his name. All these famous Russian MMA that are Russians, not guys who are from different regions of Russia, right? MMA fighters and all that, and all these hockey players and all this, and all the guys who go out and fight in the special military operation, all these guys who are tough and good fighters and all this stuff. Well, they didn't have government support. What the fuck is wrong with you? It's this attitude, which is this is one of the things where the legacies of communism, where you have people who are like, my kid's getting beat up. The government has to teach him how to be strong. Dude, fuck that. Get the fuck out of here with that. Miss me. It's ridiculous. Yeah, should the government have some sort of programs to increase men's masculinity and to raise boys into men as being part of school philosophically? Yes, but it's your fault if you're a wuss and you live in a society of wusses, and that's not even the case. There's fights all the time. It's just if the Russian guy wins, it doesn't make the news. Grow up. You know what, Max? Stick your fingers in your mouth and throw up the black pill that you swallowed, that makes you have all the opinions of the most like default Sovkovy Russian sit at home at grandma's apartment blogger. That's my recommendation. Wow, that's deep. Venezuela has 3.2 million militias to domestic violence and coups against the native government. I think the USA needs something like that, man. Venezuela is a third world, but USA can learn something from. There are people's militias in Russia. There are people's militias all over Russia, and they work legally. Oh, this disinformation. Disinformation. The problem is none of them speak English, but they're all over the place. Look up a group called Severny Человек, the Northman, or Northern Man. It's a huge organization that has many, many different, what you want to call them, like franchises all over Russia, and they teach Russian people, especially kids, how to fight. They do all sorts of things related to fighting. It's this giant movement. I've tried to kind of contact some people who are in it who might speak English, but so far I've had no luck. So there, those people aren't waiting for Putin to allow them through a government grant and a stamp to learn how to fight, like Max insists that we have to do, in pure Soviet logic, because you can only really learn how to be a man and fight through bureaucracy, because through bureaucracy, that's how we win. Guys, the longer I live here, the more I hate communism. I absolutely just am starting to despise it. I try to be fair because I know so many people who have some sort of like affinity for it, and there are certain things where I kind of get where it comes from, but it just turns people into little bug men, little bug men who need bureaucracy to come save them. So, anyways, let's see. It says, does anyone want to call in? No, not that I'm thinking. Okay. Any other questions? Someone watched too much Fight Club. That's, okay, that was a good one. I meant, yeah, but anyways, yeah. So, guys, one day, hopefully on this program, we'll be able to have someone from some sort of people's militia actually call in. But yeah, I mean, there's a war on, too, about this whole about like sort of interethnic conflicts and stuff. Look at how I look. I'm going all over. I've been all over the Caucasus Mountains. Like I said, I've been even arrested in one part of them. And I do stuff at night here, and I don't give a fuck. Zero fucks given. Do you think I am the Lord of MMA? Do you think I am the? I am no Alistair Overeem. I am no Fyodor Emelianenko or Emelianenko. Excuse me. I said the more the American way. Emelianenko. Trust me, I am not the Conan the Barbarian here, and I just do whatever the hell I want. And that's how you have to live. That's the Russian way of living and sort of doing things. Is not living in fear. Living in fear is not the Russian way. If you live in fear, then you've lost your Russianness. When you say that only bureaucracy can save me, then you're off the team. You're fired. You're cut. So there you go. Anyways, guys, I kind of don't want to end on such a negative note. I thought this would be more fun stuff. Yay, fun, and then with magical bunnies or something. Oh, the camera's on this side. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Anything else? Oh, someone's writing. Well, that's nice. In español. But yeah, so I mean, yeah. And another thing too is I think one of the problems with modern media is that it sort of brings to light how many like bar fights and just sort of like fights on the street with between a lot of people are. But like when you're my age, you don't really get into that anymore. I don't see it as much of a problem. I think that people just really blow it out of proportion because they want government nanny to protect them. Uh, I thought some people were writing questions, or did I make this up in my mind? Hmm. Anyways, you guys have like 1 minute to write some more questions. Those people who are supposedly frantically typing, or if someone wants to call in, they can, because then I'm gonna vanish into the night. Um, I shoot the magical bunnies. Jill just cooks them. Okay, that's now we're going off into another thing. Bakani is typing, but it's gonna taking a while here. But anyways, I think someone asked about like the medical system. That's a kind of a huge topic that requires an entire episode, so I had to kind of pass on that one. But yeah, so anyways, let's just get this. Hopefully, this one last question, and then let's just go. Fun fact: do you know that Mexicans pledge allegiance by doing the almost Nazi salute? Interesting. No, I did not, but I do know that the Germans, or at least supposedly, according to a lot of historians on YouTube, really wanted to coax Mexico into being in World War I on their side. So Mexico was almost part of the Axis powers of World War I. If they would have joined the war, would history be that much different? I don't know. Anyways, I'm definitely not an expert in Mexican history, but I just think that that's an interesting thing to think about. Anyways, guys, I guess that's it. I'm going to call it. I'll try to upload this video soon. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much for sending really interesting questions, by the way. Really good ones today. Extremely unusual. Like 3 or 4 of these questions I've never gotten before in all my years of talking about Russia. So this is fantastic. Anyways, guys, I wish you all the best and again, a happy and safe Victory Day.